Rob Dozer. Rob Dozer's arrival in Indiana didn't come quietly. With a resume rooted in NBA and G League development, his hiring signals a deliberate shift in how the Fever plans to build, not just around talent, but through it. By bringing Dozer in early, before the offseason even ramps up, the organization is making a clear statement.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Development is now the cornerstone of their strategy. It's not just about fixing last season's flaws. It's about creating an environment where players like Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell can refine every detail of their game with top-tier coaching. And with segment, KP Keith Porter, create new folder, Keith Porter. Keith Porter's still on staff despite his Achilles injury. The Fever are layering depth into their developmental framework, showing resilience, vision, and urgency in equal measure. This move stands out because it bucks the trend of reactive off-season tinkering. Instead, the Fever are building proactively from the inside, laying groundwork for long-term success with targeted hires. Dozer's presence and his connection to the Pacers' development ecosystem opens up institutional knowledge that most WNBA teams don't tap into. For Clark, it means earlier access to elite coaching and individualized plans to sharpen her tools, from handling defensive pressure to stamina management. The strategy isn't flashy, but it's exactly the kind of foundation great franchises are built on. Fans weren't expecting much from the Indiana Fever in November. It's the off-season. The buzz has died down. The headlines are quieter. And yet, the Fever made a move that immediately caught attention. And for once, it wasn't about who's coming off the floor. It was about who's getting brought in. The hiring of Rob Dozer, a seasoned player development coach with real NBA and G League experience, signals something fans have been waiting to hear. The Fever are finally getting serious. Not just about this season, not just about optics, but about long-term, sustainable growth rooted in actual basketball infrastructure. And for the entire roster, this changes everything. This isn't about shaking up the coaching staff mid-season. This wasn't a desperate panic hire. This was strategic and early. It's November, and the front office is already making foundational changes, adding a player development specialist before most teams even start off-season evaluations. That alone speaks volumes. The message? They're not waiting to see how things go. They're building now. Rob Dozer isn't just another assistant. He spent years honing talent in the NBA system and G League, where skill development isn't optional. It's a survival skill. His arrival tells you the Fever are done playing catch-up. They want to refine, elevate, and future-proof the roster. Because it's not just about who you have on paper. It's about how much better those players get, and how fast. Is already elite. She broke records, pulled ratings, and brought in a whole new demographic of fans. But the transition from college to the WNBA is a beast. And even the best talents need guidance. With Dozer in the room, Clark isn't just being handed more reps. She's getting tailored coaching to manage fatigue, adjust to the league's defensive pressure, and expand her offensive counters. That kind of refinement doesn't just make a star. It builds a superstar. But it's not just about Clark. This move benefits everyone. From Aaliyah Boston to Kelsey Mitchell to Lexi Hull, individualized player development becomes the centerpiece. Not rotations. Not game day decisions. This is about skills. That means footwork, shooting mechanics, defensive timing, the kind of technical focus that turns potential into production. The Fever aren't swapping out head coaches. They're not throwing the entire system into chaos. Keith Porter, a valuable piece of the development staff, is staying on, even while recovering from an Achilles injury. His continued presence brings stability and experience. And the fact that the team chose to add Dozer without cutting Porter, that shows balance. They didn't just fill a gap, they expanded the room. That's how you scale development, without losing continuity. And if you're wondering why this matters now, look at what other successful franchises are doing. NBA teams have been investing in specialized development staff for years. They're hiring skill coaches, analytics coordinators, even movement specialists to fine-tune performance at a microscopic level. The WNBA is starting to follow that lead, and the Fever are one of the first to do it proactively, not after a losing season, not in response to public criticism, but ahead of schedule. That's what winning teams do. This early investment sets the tone. It gives players months of off-season access to one-on-one sessions, long before training camp. That means habits get built earlier. Relationships get formed sooner. Players return sharper, smarter, more prepared. And when the season starts, the difference is obvious, not just in individual stats, but in overall chemistry and execution. And let's not ignore the Pacers connection here. Rob Dozer's ties to the Pacers and their G League affiliate aren't just resume fillers. They open doors. There's organizational synergy now, shared knowledge, a pipeline of expertise that goes beyond one hire. That's an advantage other WNBA teams don't have. It also signals something much bigger than a coaching shuffle. It shows that the Fever aren't treating this rebuild like a PR campaign. They're not banking on Clark to fix everything on her own. They're building a culture. And culture starts with investment, not in flashy signings, but in the day-to-day grind of development. That's where championships are born. And the fans noticed. The response to Dozer's hire wasn't confusion or indifference. It was optimism. Because this time, the move wasn't about damage control. It wasn't reactive. It was calculated, intelligent, and perfectly timed. It gave supporters a clear sign that the franchise is learning from its past missteps and aligning itself with the direction professional basketball is heading. They saw last season's struggles. They saw the fatigue, the offensive breakdowns, the lapses in spacing. And now they're seeing the fix. Not a flashy press release. A real fix. One that starts with better coaching, better development, and a better off-season plan. Doesn't need to be rescued. She needs a system that's ready to match her ambition. And this move proves that the Fever are working toward that, not by trying to overcorrect on the court midseason, but by doing the work now behind the scenes where it counts most. It also opens the door to what's next. This hire sets the expectation that more changes are coming, roster upgrades, trades, free agency plays, and smarter draft moves. But instead of rushing into all of it, they're starting with the foundation, development. Because if your infrastructure is weak, no big-name signing is going to fix that. If your players aren't growing, your team isn't winning. This is how you build sustainably. The league is evolving. Player development isn't optional anymore. It's essential. And if the Fever are serious about rising in the standings, moves like this have to be the norm, not the exception. What they've done here is signal that they finally understand that. It's not about patching holes. It's about building something that lasts. And it's already having ripple effects. When fans see the front office investing in expert coaching, it increases buy-in. When players see the organization prioritizing their growth, it builds loyalty. And when the rest of the league sees the Fever quietly stacking smart moves in the offseason, that shifts perception. That's how you start to rewrite the narrative. Because yes, Clark is special, but she can't do it alone. No one can. Development matters. Coaching matters. Systems matter. And for the first time in a long time, the Indiana Fever are proving that they know it. If you've been waiting for this franchise to finally take itself seriously, this is your moment. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Are you excited about this direction? What do you think this means for and the team next season? Like if you've been rooting for real investment. Share this if you're tired of superficial changes. And subscribe if you want to keep tracking the moves that actually matter. Because this wasn't just a hire. It was a message. And now the rest of the league is on notice. The Indiana Fever just sent a message, and it's not subtle. By bringing in Rob Dozer, a respected NBA and G League player development coach, this franchise didn't just make a staffing move. They made a statement. We're not sitting back and hoping saves us. We're building a system that deserves her. And that shift in tone, that's what fans have been waiting for. Because let's be honest, last season wasn't easy. Yes, the excitement around Clark's arrival was unmatched. Yes, the ticket sales were up. The media buzz was real. But the results? Inconsistent. The gameplay? Clunky. And the development? Spotty at best. The Fever had talent, but no structure. They had a star, but no infrastructure to help her thrive. And it showed. There were moments when Clark looked isolated, where the team couldn't space the floor properly, and where defensive adjustments weren't being made fast enough. And when fans started asking why a generational player didn't look comfortable, it wasn't on her. It was on the system around her. That's where Rob Dozer comes in. This isn't a flashy hire. He's not there to make viral headlines or sit courtside in a suit on game days. He's the guy behind the scenes, doing the real work that no one talks about until it changes everything. His job? Develop skills. Not schemes, not plays, players. He's the person who turns good shooters into consistent threats. The coach who fixes footwork, helps guards read defenses faster, and teaches young forward how to finish through contact. That's the difference between potential and production. And that kind of investment, it doesn't just help Clark. This entire roster benefits. Aaliyah Boston is already a powerhouse in the paint, but there's still room for growth in spacing, shot creation, and help defense. Lexi Hull's defensive grit is there, but refining her offensive game could elevate her from role player to serious contributor. Kelsey Mitchell's perimeter scoring is deadly, but what happens when she's also initiating the offense more effectively? All of that comes down to player development. Not just reps, but intentional reps. Not just coaching, but targeted coaching. And that's exactly what Dozer brings. The fact that the Fever didn't wait until January or February to make this move says it all. They wanted him in early, November early. That means Dozer isn't showing up when camp starts. He's already in the building, watching film, evaluating weaknesses, designing individual plans. This gives every player months of lead time to fix the gaps in their game before next season tips off. That's a massive advantage. While other teams are still figuring out who to hire or what to fix, the Fever are already working. That kind of head start matters, especially when you're trying to climb out of the bottom half of the league. And let's talk about Keith Porter for a second. A guy who's been grinding with this team, only to suffer a major Achilles injury? Most franchises would quietly move on, but the Fever didn't. They kept him. They added Dozer without subtracting Porter. That's how you build continuity and depth. That's how you show loyalty to your staff and your players. It also sends a clear message to the roster. We've got your back. You're not alone in this. We're not just putting pressure on you to perform. We're giving you the tools to get better. We're investing in your success because we believe in this group. That kind of internal culture matters more than fans realize. It builds buy-in, trust, accountability. And then there's the Pacers angle. Dozer's background with the Pacers and their affiliate isn't just convenient. It's strategic. There's now a shared philosophy between the Fever and their NBA counterpart. Knowledge sharing. Access to proven development frameworks. A pipeline of ideas and techniques that the Fever can tap into without reinventing the wheel. That kind of synergy isn't common in women's basketball, but it's becoming more necessary. And the Fever are getting ahead of the curve. Because let's be clear, the WNBA is more competitive than ever. And player development is the new arms race. It's no longer enough to draft well or sign big names. You have to maximize what you have. Every team has talent. The ones that win, they build systems that grow it faster. That's exactly what Indiana is doing now. This move isn't about getting better overnight. It's about setting a new standard for what this franchise expects, from its staff, from its players, and from itself. It's about finally matching the ambition of the fan base with the actions of the front office. Because fans weren't just watching Clark last season. They were watching how the Fever treated her, how they supported her, how they built, or failed to build, around her. And those fans were vocal. They saw the flaws. They saw the lack of development support. And they wanted to know, does this franchise really know what it's doing? Now they have an answer. The hiring of Dozer says, yes, we're paying attention. Yes, we're learning. And yes, we're serious about getting this right. That's why this moment matters more than a splashy signing or a flashy quote. It's not a Band-Aid. It's a foundation. Because now, when Clark comes into her second year or her third, she's not carrying the burden of being the only one expected to level up. She'll be surrounded by teammates who are also improving, coaches who are evolving, a structure that's built to support a winning culture, not just a winning season. And when you zoom out, you see how this fits into a bigger picture. The Fever are building something that lasts. Not with shortcuts, not with gimmicks, but with smart, strategic moves like this one. They're laying the groundwork for playoff runs, for championship contention, for becoming a franchise that develops stars, not just relies on them. So if you're a Fever fan who's been waiting for a sign that this team is finally moving in the right direction, this is it. This hire may not lead SportsCenter. It may not trend on social media, but it's the kind of move that changes outcomes, that builds confidence, that earns respect from players across the league. Because development staff are the difference between teams that hope to win and teams that expect to, can't do it alone. And now, she doesn't have to. The Indiana Fever didn't make a headline-grabbing trade. They didn't shock the league with a superstar signing. What they did was smarter. And for once, long overdue, they made a foundational move that doesn't just impact the starting lineup, but the entire trajectory of the franchise. By hiring Rob Dozer, a player development coach with NBA and G League credentials, they've taken a step that separates hopeful teams from serious ones. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's real. It's the kind of move you don't celebrate with confetti, but with respect. Because this isn't just about next season. This is about every season after that. Let's be honest, the WNBA is evolving fast. And for a franchise like the Fever, who've been stuck in the rebuild loop for years, talent acquisition alone isn't enough anymore. You need systems. You need infrastructure. You need the kind of development program that turns rookies into stars and stars into franchise cornerstones. That's what this hire signals. And for fans who've stuck through season after season of inconsistency, roster reshuffling, and half-measured decisions, this is the first real sign that the Fever are learning from their mistakes. Because for too long, it felt like the plan was draft a generational player and hope things work out. But what happened? Clark came in and showed why she was worth the hype, but the system around her wasn't ready. The team didn't have the spacing, didn't have the tempo, didn't have the cohesion to match her game, and most importantly, didn't have the development staff in place to help her or her teammates level up. And let's be clear, Clark's not the problem. She's a massive part of the solution, but you can't throw a rising superstar into a half-built house and expect her to carry it alone. What she needs is support, guidance, coaching that sharpens her already elite instincts, coaching that doesn't just demand greatness, but develops it. Rob Dozer's arrival changes that dynamic. He brings experience from the NBA's development pipeline, where every day is about skill refinement, mechanics, and growth. He's not here to call plays. He's not managing rotations. His focus is laser sharp, making every individual player better. And that's what makes this so important. This isn't a coaching move you make if you're trying to survive. This is a move you make if you're trying to contend. Dozer's job is to find the 5% that separates a good player from a great one, the 2% that turns fatigue into finesse in the fourth quarter, the small technical improvements that turn turnovers into assists, contested shots into clean looks, average defenders into defensive anchors. That's where games are won, and that's where seasons are saved. This is especially critical for players who already operate at a high level. Clark isn't a project. She's a polished offensive weapon with range, court vision, and basketball IQ. But the pros demand evolution. The game gets faster. Defenders get smarter. And suddenly, the margins shrink. That's where development coaching becomes a cheat code. Dozer brings the tools to help Clark handle those traps at half court. Read that second defender. Save her legs with smarter movement off ball. Build better endurance. Strengthen her frame without sacrificing agility. These are the subtle tweaks that make a second-year player look like a 10-year vet. And she's not the only one who benefits. Aaliyah Boston, already a dominant force in paint, can now work on expanding her range, polishing her post footwork, and becoming even more disruptive on defense. Kelsey Mitchell, one of the league's most electric scorers, can fine-tune her shot selection and work on becoming a more efficient ball handler under pressure. Lexie Ho, she gets the opportunity to turn her raw defensive energy into calculated, high IQ stops. These aren't fantasy upgrades. These are real, measurable improvements, and they start now. Because what's most impressive about this move isn't just that it happened. It's when it happened. November is usually the quiet zone. Most franchises wait. Wait for the season to settle. Wait for the draft. Wait to see what other teams do. But the Fever didn't wait. They made this hire early, while everyone else is still figuring things out. That's a sign of something that's been missing for a long time. Intentionality. They're no longer just reacting to losses. They're preparing for wins. And they're doing it by building a coaching structure that gives players the one thing they've lacked: continuity. For years, the team has been caught in a loop of short-term fixes and late-stage staffing changes. But now, they're anchoring their rebuild in player development. One of the only investments in basketball that always pays off. And don't overlook what they did with Keith Porter. Most teams would have moved on from a development coach sidelined with an Achilles injury. Not the Fever. They doubled down, keeping Porter and adding Dozier. That's not just smart. That's loyalty. That's depth. And it ensures that no matter what, the player development system doesn't stop. Segment. RD Rob Dozier. It also sets a tone for everything else that's coming. Because let's be real, this is just step one. If they're hiring this early, it means they're thinking 2, 3 for moves ahead. Free agency, trades, draft picks. All of that is now happening under the umbrella of a clear developmental framework. That changes everything. It changes how rookies are integrated, how veterans are maintained, how every workout, practice, and off-season session is approached. It turns the Fever from a franchise that's chasing relevance into one that's creating it. And that's something fans can finally believe in. This isn't publicity stunt. It's not a response to backlash. It's not a box-checking hire to show that the team is doing something. This is a calculated, strategic move to build winning habits into the bones of the franchise. And if you're a fan who's watched the Fever stumble through season after season of instability, this feels different. Because it is different. They've got the star. They've got the talent. Now they're building the system. And that's how you turn potential into playoffs. Promise into performance. Hype into hardware. If you've been riding with the Fever through the ups and downs, now's your moment. This is the start of a smarter era. One where the moves make sense. Where the foundation is finally being poured before the house is built. Where the long-term vision is clear. And it's not just about... It's about everyone getting better. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Are you seeing the same shift? Is this the beginning of something real? Or just another phase? Like, if you're feeling the momentum shift, share this with someone who's been sleeping on the Fever. And hit subscribe if you're ready to follow this team into what might finally be their turning point. Because this time, the plan doesn't just sound good. It looks good. It feels right. And now, it's starting to work.